Oh, Nyawiscan at Swagwego. I was asked by a friend to talk a little bit about repetitives because they can be confusing, and I remember when repetitives were confusing to me. I kind of knew how to use a little bit, just the ones that you kind of hear. But when I had to teach them or if I had to explain them, I would just kind of avoid them because I didn't have enough wherewithal of how to use them. But since then, I've kind of got a better idea how to use them, and I can share what I know. So if we talk about what is a repetitive pre-pronominals are like a prefix, I guess. They come before a conjugation. So usually somebody has to be doing the action, right? Me, you, him, them, you all. It comes before that conjugation. It can indicate an action or an occurrence is happening again, but it can also be used to indicate something is still happening or keeps happening. Usually for the habituals, it's going to do that. And then you can use that repetitive s with a lot of other things that it just gets in, like mixed in with. So like when you have one object, they'll put that repetitive s in front of those two. Like Swenny's had one day, right? There's all kinds of other ways that do that. And then like if you said skahoa d, you put that repetitive s and then you put that d on there on the word for door. Kahoa. Skahoa d would be like the other side of the door. So there's other ways that that repetitive pre-pronominal gets used, but this one we're just going to use it for repetitives. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to use this verb to get burned, and we're going to give you the three aspects. So the first one is the stative aspect, have been burned, glottal stop, skunda'o. And then the next one we'll do is the habitual one, which is like regularly gets burned, which the root is glottal stop, skundats. And then we'll do the punctual one, which is a glottal stop, and then skundat. So that will be the future tense will get burned, did get burned, like past or factual. And then there is an optative too, like would, could, should, might get burned, which I'm not really going to cover in here. But with the other rules you should be able to put that together on your own. All right. So the first one is the stative one to have been burned. So if we just take the skunda'o one and use the blue prefixes, this assumes you know what the blue prefixes are. So we have here, right, like I have been burned, you have been burned, he has been burned, you all have been burned, they have been burned. And you can go through all these, right? Like you got all the blue prefixes in here. So this is just a regular blue prefix. And then I make note that age is really wage, go is really yago, onkni is really yonkni, odi is really yodi, and ongwa is really yongwa. So we'll add those in so you can see, because you're going to need stuff like that starts with the letter Y, and we're going to kind of single those out in a little bit. And then this one too, like this one has a W in there. That's not in there right away, but you want to know that those are there. So you got to kind of like pick some of these to start off with. There's different rules, there's different repetitives for different ones that are in there. And one thing we're going to start off with is the ones that start with the letter Y. So if they start with the letter Y, even these hidden Y's, they all start with Y's. These, not that one, these ones though, right? So normally you use a repetitive S with the letter Y, and it's going to become DZ. So some people like to use J. I try not to use J just because that's a cislocative too. When a cislocative combines with a Y, it also becomes a J. So when I do repetitives, I try to stick to DZ for mine. But just be aware that you will see J's for repetitives too. And they're not wrong. So if we look at the ones, right, we have here, 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 here. These are all the ones that are going to start with a Y. So those are the ones that are going to change to a DZ. So if we do that, well, I highlight them, right? Those are the ones that all have to change. They all start with the letter Y. So now we need to make those repetitive. So if we do that, Now you can see. So instead of onkni, now it's zonkni. Instead of ongwa, now it's zongwa. Yodi became zodi. Yago became zago. And then yo became zo. So zago skondao. Zago skondao. She has been burned again. All right. Zodi skondao. They two women, or two or more women, have been burned. Zongwa skondao. We have been burned again. So those are repetitive, right? So these are the ones that started with the Y. I mean, go back again, right? Those were the ones that started with the Y. And then when you combine that S with the Y, they became DZs. So we have those in there. All right. So now let's move on to another part. When you have blue prefixes, this is like a special column for blue prefixes as you go across all the U's. Some people call these the twos because you can label these like one is a first person, two is a second person, and then these are like threes for third person. So this is second person, this is singular, and these are second person plural, right? Because there's more than one person. So you two, you all. So for the blue ones, second person single and plural, you're going to use G. You're going to use G. So we already have these other ones that did the DZs, right? Now for these ones, they're gonna add a G to make those repetitive. So let's change those. Now you have Jisat skondao. You have been burned again. Jisneet skondao. You two have been burned again. Jiswat skondao. You all have been burned again. All right. So we change these to G. So for the blue, like that's where you'll use G. And I make note of like the blue ones because we'll come up to that in a little bit. So now we're going to say like everything else that we haven't changed, you're going to use the letter S. All right. So we'll highlight the ones. These are the last ones that we haven't changed yet. All right. So we haven't changed these ones. So we're going to put an S in here. So we have a W in here, so it's going to change, right? This one's going to change these ones. So keep an eye on these ones as they change. And now you can see that this is Swagate skondao. I have been burned again. Sho skondao. He has been burned again. Shodit skondao. Two males or more have been burned again. Same thing here. So you can see like we just put S's on these ones here. Right here is where we put JIs. Everything else had Ys. So we changed those to DZs. All right. So hopefully you can follow that. You can always just rewind this part and watch it again and follow along. So the next one is if we do the habitual one, which is glottal stop skundats. Skundats. So if we just do regular habitual, right, we're going to use red prefixes now. So we have ge, se, ha, ye, ga. This is a C stem. Hni, sni, he, kni, akni. Dwa, swa, hadi, wadi, and agwa. And then we make note of this, right? Like he, usually when something comes in front of it, it turns into this ni, right? And that just gets it treated like a pronoun that starts with the H that doesn't really come back on. Akni is really yakni. Agwa is really yagwa. So let's put those back on there. And now we have these hidden ones on there, right? That Y, we know that that's a Y. We didn't really mess with this one. But these ones are the two, right? So if it starts with the letter Y, we're going to do the same thing we did last time. The repetitive S plus the Y is going to turn into a DZ. So these ones, instead of akni and agwa, if we make them repetitive now, well, we're singling those out, right? Oh, this one too starts with a Y. Yay. So now when we combine those, now we're going to get zait skundats, zakni skundats, zagwat skundats. She keeps getting burned. Me and someone keep getting burned. Me and them keep getting burned. So like me and my family, me and my friends, me and my teammates, me and my friend, me and my brother, me and my cousin keep getting burned. It's like we get burned. We get burned again. So it's like you keep getting burned. So these are the ones that started with the letter Y. So now you're going to use that DZ instead. So if we move on, now we're going to move on to the inclusives. So if this is for red prefixes, the inclusives, which is you and me, all of us, and then the second person plural, which would be you two and you all. So when we highlight that, it's those ones right there. This is why it's good. Like sometimes other people, like you'll see these ones here, they'll usually put them right here underneath these because it's like us two, and this is also us two, so they put them there. But I don't order mine that way. I keep them ordered the way I saw them when I learned in Oneida. So the you always goes across this whole thing, right? It's you, you two, you all. And I just move these down here. It seems to work for me because in my class we call this little area gaosegon, in the box. All right. So we know that this little corner is kind of the special corner for red prefixes, and then for blues, gaosegon is like that whole U column here. All right. So for those ones, that's what we're going to use is G. We're going to use G. So these all should add a G to make them habitual or repetitive. So when we do that, G ni skondats, G dwat skondats, G sneet skondats, and G swat skondats. All right, me and you keep getting burned. You two keep getting burned. We all keep getting burned. You all keep getting burned. All right. So we explain why these ones are the way they are. And that happens on a lot of different things, not just repetitives, but usually when you have two options, when it comes to red prefixes, these ones. So even when you do like optative, you have the option of ah or I. AE, this is where all the AEs go. All right. So we have those ones now, the red inclusive second person plural. So we've changed the ones that start with Y, and we've changed the ones that have that special property. Now, when we go to non-blue and starts with the letter S, you're going to use T. All right. So the only one that starts with letter S, we'll highlight that one in a second there, is you. Say. So that one starts with the letter S. So to make it repetitive, we're going to put a T in front of it. You can't put another S in front of an S, so we're going to put a T there. So we change that. Tseit skondats. So you keep getting burned, right? That's that rule for it. But it's not, because when it's blue, when we go back to the blue one, that one's sa. That starts with the S too, but that one's in the gaosegon for blue, right? So that one uses G. This one uses a T. All right. And so when I say non-blues that start with S, there's also purple prefixes, right? So anytime you want to make like the you to me prefix, the you to her, him to her, you all to him, there's more than just these ones, but these are just examples of non-blue prefixes that start with the letter S. If you wanted to make any of these repetitive, you're going to put a T in front of all those. All right. So we go back to this again, and now we have these ones here, the inclusives and the second person plurals, the one that started with S. We have the ones that started with Y. We've changed those. So now again, everything else, you're going to use the letter S. So what's left? What's the everything else? The everything else are just these ones. All right, those are the ones we haven't touched yet. Those are the ones that haven't fallen into the other categories. They don't start with the S. They're not inclusive or second person plural. They don't start with the letter Y. So this is the everything else. You're going to use a letter S. All right. So when we change those, shat skondats, shit skondats, shadit skondats, swadit skondats, skneet skondats. All right. So you just put an S in front of those, and now they're repetitive. Okay. So the two males keep getting burned. Two females keep getting burned. They males are mixed group, keep getting burned. They females keep getting burned. He keeps getting burned. I keep getting burned. All right. So there, and I do them kind of in that order rather than if we just went down the line here, then I got to say, okay, this one, you got to put an S in front of this. This one, you got to put a T, and we're back to a S, and then this is a DZ, and then this is a S. So you're kind of like bouncing around, and that's why I kind of separated them, like the way you'll go through it. Now, the more you do it, the more you'll catch on, and you won't have to be so formulaic about it. But that's kind of the rhyme and reason about how you do these ones. So we've done the stative, and we've done the habitual repetitives. So now we're going to go into the punctuals, which is a glottal and then skundat. All right. So the first thing we're going to do is like the factual or past tense. Did get burned. All right. So this assumes that you know how factual and past tense rules work. Just for this here, like you're not going to have to do this right now. Like you should already know, like, here it is. Here's Gauss Hegel, right? So when you do past tense in here, everything gets a letter E. All right. Everything that starts with a H gets wa. So we have ha, we have hni, even though the H doesn't come back on, and we have huddy. So those all get wa. I don't know why that's a mistake right there. That shouldn't be in there. All right. And then if it starts with a Y, you got these ones here. So you get what, right? So what? So ye, what plus ye becomes what a. What plus yakni becomes what akni. What plus agwa becomes what agwa. All right. And then everything else that's not any of those gets ot, right? So ot gate, ot sate, ot got, ot kni, ot wadi, right? So those are the past tense rules. So now, but we're going to use this. We're going to use this in a way. There's some rules for the past tense too. So if it's inclusive or second person plural, you're going to use say. Now we already have E's in here, right? So we're just going to have S's in front of these. All right. Everything else is going to use sa. So you only have to use two things when you do the past tense, repetitive or factual. All right. But let's just focus on the inclusive and second person plural, these ones here. Let's just focus on these, right? The regular past tense already has an E, and we're going to use say. So basically, you're just going to have say in front of all these. So let's change those real quick. So say hneet skondat, say sneet skondat, say dwat skondat, say swat skondat. All right. Me and you got burned again. You two got burned again. We all got burned again. You all got burned again. All right. So those are all the ones that just use say. All right. And then everything else is just going to use sa. So you're replacing all these modal prefixes with sa. All right. So these are all going to go away. And they're going to become sa. All right. So that's what's going to happen. Well, we'll do the single column first, right? So let me go back to that. This here, all these modal prefixes here, even the glottal stops, that one, the one that shouldn't be there, they're going to go away and you're just going to use sa. So in the single column, let's watch the single column here for the change. Sa gate skondat, sa sate skondat, sa skondat, sa yate skondat, and then sa gat skondat. Maybe that glottal should be there. Yeah, it is correct. All right. So that's what's going to happen here. Now here you do have like sa plus ha. So it just becomes sa, like it blends together, the sa and the ha. But again, see, we took all those modals and we just changed them to sa. All right. So now, well, we already did these ones, right? So we can leave these ones alone because these are all say. But in the rest of this dual column here, we're going to change those to sa. Or here we go, dual column. Watch right here because we already changed these. So now we have sa nit skondat, saknit skondat, and sayaknit skondat. All right. 2 males got burned again, 2 females got burned again, me and someone got burned again. And now again, like I said, we already did these ones. So you're just going to look at the plural column now. And again, these modal prefixes are going to disappear and they're going to become sa. All right, well, right here it's going to be sa plus hadi. So it's going to be sadi. And there you go. Sadi skundat. The males got burned again. This was wadi, sawadi skundat. This one was yagwa, sayagwa skundat. All right, me and them got burned again. Kind of talked about these. Sa and ha becomes sa. Sa plus hadi becomes sadi. Sa and hni. This is just there just to treat it like a H. Sani. All right. So we've done everything past tense. Past tense or factual with repetitive now. All these are say. Everything else is sa. And it's been blended together accordingly. All right. And we use red prefixes for the past tense or the punctual aspect. So if we kind of take a look at this one here again, we're kind of looking back at the habitual one that we did before, and you had rules, right, for when do you use G and DZ and T and S. And we're going to do future now. So we're going to do future. You're just going to add a future E to this, right? So future is going to go in here, in here, in here. Like there's not, you still follow all the rules that you did to get these, which you can rewind or go back to. But now we're going to put the modal prefix, the future E is going to go in front. All right. So for all of these, they're going to change into future E's. Okay. So we have the future, we got the repetitive, we got the pronoun. Future, repetitive, pronoun. Future, repetitive, pronoun. And it just keeps going like that, right? So these are all G, right? And G sneet skundat. Me and you will get burned again. And G sneet skundat. You too will get burned again. And G dwat skundat. We all will get burned again. And G swat skundat. You all will get burned again. All right. That's all we did was put future E's in front of these now to make them future repetitive. All right. And we followed the rules that we did before. You just have a nasal E now in front to make it future repetitive. So the one thing you do want to take note of is we do have the and this was wadi, right? So plus wa, if you do future tense, and wa becomes won. And if you have that, this isn't swa like you all. It's not that. This is actually plus a repetitive and then the wa. So that rule will still apply even though this S is between them. So it would be swon. Swandit skundat. But you wouldn't do it here. Like you wouldn't do swant skundat. Like if you were just going to future, like you'll get burned. It does, because that's the whole thing is swa. And for some reason, like when it still maintains the and wa becomes won. And even though this isn't, this kind of just comes for the ride. Swon. All right, so you make note of that in here. Just a little thing to remember. So now you have different ways to do these things. So if it was a day verb, I mean, here we just had the modal in front, right? But if it's a day verb, just add a D in the front. And now it's a duplicate. Now this verb doesn't actually do this, but just just for hypothetical like demonstration and stuff, we're going to make this a day verb even though it's not. So if it was a day verb, you just put a D on the front of all these. You've already put the future tense on there. You've already did your formula for like which repetitive you're going to put on them. And you're just going to put a D on the front of them now. If it was a day verb. All right. So now it's a future. Dan. If it was a hey verb, a translocative verb, instead of dan, now you put a H in the front. Instead of dan, now it's hen. It's still all the same ways that you added these. But now it's just hen. Everything is hen. Okay. Future translocative or a hey verb. Hen. If it was a ne verb or a partitive, then you put an n in the front. So now instead of da or ha, now it's ne, 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 ne. Okay? So you still have just a letter n in front. You still have your future tense modal. You still have all your formulas for why you use the certain repetitive, and then you have your red prefixes where they belong. I hope I'm not going too fast. I'm just saying, like, you don't have to overthink all these. Just because it's a day verb, you don't have to put it on a pedestal. Add a D. Okay? Just because it's a translocative hey verb, don't put it on a pedestal. Just add H's in front of your future nasal E. And then same thing with a partitive verb. Just add N's in front of everything. All right? So if we do past tense repetitive, so if we do the past tense factual, then if it's a day verb, now it's donsa and donse. So you've already done the rules for sa and se, right? Se goes in certain parts and everything else is sa. All it is now, because it's a day verb, is donsa and dose. So you just have this D nasal O added onto them. Still got to do your thing. All right? If it's a translocative hey verb, now you have honsa and hose. Again, you still have sa and se. So you follow the rules for sa and se. They just have hon on the front of them. So this is the one where, like, I hear people say honsa. And that's not what it is. It's actually honsa. Honsa and hose. All right? So there is hope, but that's like just a straight up past tense translocative. Like ho seigo, right? Ho ga gid. I went there and came back. Those are ho, H-O glottal, but these ones aren't. Honsa, hose. If it's a ne verb, same thing. Nonsa, nonse. All right, you still have sa and se. So you just follow those rules. Like, we're kind of demystifying that you got to do all this stuff or they're untouchable. So some of the sample verbs you may have heard, whether it's in ceremonies or stuff, is like to renew, future tense. So this one is a stem. It's awasis. All right. So I'm going to renew, future tense, repetitive, prefix. Eskawasis. I'm going to renew. This one starts with a S and it's not blue, so we're going to use a T. And tawasis. You're going to renew. He's going to renew. Eshawasis. This is where it's good to learn to separate your S's and your H's, because you have repetitive S, H, A. And there are things where you do like sa, like future you, right? And then esha is like future repetitive him. And then this one would be yon, so it starts with a Y, so it becomes DZ. And zowasis, she's going to renew. The other one is to repent. This one's a habitual form. I don't hear this much, but it's in there. So we have the red prefixes. And then we have the proper repetitives in here, marked in. Skadate wata. Sadade wata. Sadade wata. Zondade wata. I keep putting an H in there. It's wata. Birthday, to go through a cycle. So you have, again, hosa, hosa gaho, hosa saho, hosaho, hosa yeho. So this is an interesting verb right here because, again, it's a translocative to go through, and it ends in a regular O. So usually, like for midwinters and stuff, like they'll do future tense. Skad heskaho. It'll go another year, right? But this is, it went a year. You might hear this at like a 1 year feast or something. Hosagaho. So you got the translocative, repetitive past, conjugation, and then the root. And this is an interesting root because it's either aho or aho. And it's a syllable count word. So especially this one. This is the one people use for the birthday. So hosa. And then normally like a red one has the H in front of it. So hosa. Saho. Hosaho. So you can say Au Esad Hosaho. Happy birthday to him. Au Esad Hosayeho. Happy birthday to her. All right. And that about wraps up the repetitives. At least as far as this goes. I haven't done anything on like repetitive commands yet. But I hope that helps. You can rewind it, watch it again, replay the segments that you need, and hopefully that's helpful to you. So, Dani.